And we have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. Before doing a round of introductions so that everyone knows who the board members are, I just wanted to announce that Amy had communicated to me, who's an alternate, Amy McMahon, that she would not be able to attend. Sarah had communicated that she would likely be late, which apparently she is, but she would try to get here for the meeting at some point. She had a conflict. And Eric had hoped to attend virtually, but he had a conflict come up, so he is the town planner, won't be able to attend tonight, but he said he would take minutes off of the recording. So again, just for introductions, for the sake of anyone there, and also people who would be hearing this recording, I'm George Tolumsis, the chair of the planning board. Start with you, Jeff, and just go around the table there.
Sure. Jeff Salzer, vice chair.
Victor Michella, member.
Peter McIver, member.
Mark Penfield.
Yeah. Jason.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the first item on the agenda is the annual board reorganization. So the board has 3 officer positions: chair, vice chair, and clerk. And the process is to, there can be nomination of other members. Someone can nominate themselves. If you're nominating someone else, we typically would check in if the person is willing to serve in that position. There is not a need per Robert's rules. There's not a need for a second of a nomination. So we'll always start with chair. And so the floor is open for nominations for chair of the planning board.
I'm too new to go ahead and put my name forward. I would recommend you continue in the role so that all our new members at least get a year under our belts before we try and take on a leadership role. That's just my 2 cents. So,
Thank you, Victor. Are there other nominations?
Nominate Jeff for vice chair if he's interested.
Okay, why don't we finish the chair first? Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
See if there were any other nominations for chair. Sorry, I wasn't more specific.
I agree with Victor.
Okay, so hearing none, all in favor of me continuing as chair?
aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. So
You.
go ahead, Peter. You were nominating Jeff as vice chair.
Yes.
Are there other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. All in favor of Jeff as vice chair?
Aye.
Unanimous. Now we have the always favorite position of clerk. One nice thing is that whenever Eric is attending, he does the minutes, but the clerk has traditionally filled in that function. That's one of the biggest roles of the clerk, fill in that function when Eric is not present.
A question.
Yes, Victor.
I see Pete doing the online thing now. Is it pretty much really just manning the online and hitting the record button as far as the clerk is concerned, or is it literally the reason I'm not just asking questions? I've been secretary or clerk in some other bodies in my past, and the problem I've always had is not being able to participate in the meeting.
Yep.
So I'm too busy trying to keep track of what is in the meeting. But it looks like today's technology has made it a little bit easier to be the clerk and participate. So if that's true and Pete doesn't want to continue because he's doing it now, then maybe I would consider being.
Thank you. So you're potentially nominating yourself. Appreciate that.
Potentially, if the technology is
yeah.
what I think it is and what I see, I think I can
Sure.
learn the technology. But if it really does fall back into sitting here, then I'd rather participate in the meeting.
I'm getting the impression that Eric no longer has an excuse not to do the minutes. even if he's not here, he's gonna, he has the opportunity to do them after the fact, so.
I also, as I think I said to you, Sarah, the last night when she took notes, I clerk the fire station building committee meetings and I write the notes afterwards based on the recording.
Hmm.
I'll take shorthand during the meeting, but I
Okay.
follow up after and just type them out.
Well, if you don't want to continue.
I'd be happy to nominate you.
Okay.
And yeah, having done the clerk role myself for 3 years at one point, I totally relate to what you're saying, but this is before these were recorded, so it can be a distraction, as you're saying, from full participation. I don't want to assume Eric, when he's present, does them. I don't want to assume this may be a one-off that he's willing to do it from the recording simply because it was such short notice and we don't have a clerk currently. We're between clerks. So it may be that when he's not present, it would fall on the clerk to do the minutes, but also you would have the option of doing it from the recording, obviously.
Having seen him in the ZBA, he typically just did them from the recording. We put a little recorder on the desk and, the next,
Gotcha.
minutes, next meeting. So I'm
Sure.
assuming he would assume the same role.
So we don't have him here to check. So do you want to continue with the process, assuming that's likely the case, but that it may occasionally fall on you to
If
write up the
it
minutes?
can, it happens once in a while. It's, as long as I don't have to do it during the meeting, I can rely on a
Got it.
recording or something else.
Okay.
That makes the job a
Gotcha.
little bit easier and palatable.
Yeah, and it probably would, as you're saying, with Peter starting the meeting. Eric has been doing that. It could be something the clerk could do. It was just Peter was just volunteering because in Eric's absence tonight. But that would be a minor function. I guess that's a pretty straightforward process to do that. But you do have to monitor, people coming in to the meeting and that kind of thing. So, we could be worked out with Eric, whether the clerk or he would do that. So are you okay with us following through with a vote, Victor?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. So I hear no other nominations for clerk. All in favor of Victor taking on that role? Aye, and I would say thank you very much. And you're
Welcome.
abstaining, Victor?
Well, I'm fine.
You're voting for yourself? Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
I think I
Okay,
voted.
thank you.
It's okay.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of June 6th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a
Second.
second. Any discussion? I had an oh so minor recommendation for a change. It's at the top of page 2. The second line near the end, it's a reference to Jeff's comment about this is about the open space cluster development. The ordinance subtracts undevelopable space, and it says, i.e. wetlands. To me, i.e. means that is. In other words, that's. But Jeff, you were also referring to slopes. So I was going to suggest it say e.g., for example, wetlands rather than i.e. That's my picayune recommendation for change.
No, but it's accurate because he was talking more about slope anyway at the time.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. So all in favor of approving the minutes with that minor change?
Aye.
Aye, very good, unanimous. Okay, nice. So we're moving on to a public hearing. And as I'm reviewing this, you folks are welcome to move up to the table, be more comfortable. I can see if there are chairs down at the end there for you. So it's the application of RG Penfield and Sons Incorporated for property located at 277 Silver Street.
Look at here. Driving.
Located in the urban residential zoning district for a special permit pursuant to sections 200-6.11D. That's under common driveways. Section 200-8.3, which is special permits, and section 200-8.4, which is site review. Those sections of the zoning ordinance in order to allow a common driveway to serve 2 3-family residential building lots at this location. So we're going to offer a chance for you folks to do a presentation and there could be some clarifying questions from the board at that time. Then we'll open the public comment period, and then the board will go into deliberation and may have more clarifying questions during that process. So
George, is it-
welcome, and
Before we
Say-
start, is it possible to just clarify what we're supposed to be ruling on versus not? Like what exactly is within our jurisdiction? Just the driveway?
well, when you have a special permit, it also includes a site review. So all the things that would be in the site review and in the special permit would apply, are triggered. So the special permit is triggered by the common driveway. So when you have a special permit, it also includes a site review.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So you folks are welcome to start however you want with the presentation. Thanks for being here.
Yes, so we have, it's gonna be two separate building lots there. My brother will own one, I'll own one. And the best way to do that with the driveway is to have the two accesses there. And SVE guys probably know Tony Wanseski pretty good from SVE.
What better?
Yes.
Yeah.
So him and his crew, they drew this up and they did Silvercrest for us as well on Silver Street, but and I've been dealing with Eric Torog on this a little bit and that's why we needed a special permit from you guys for the main access of this thing. And then if there's any other questions you have there, and it's basically three family homes that are single story apartments.
Thank you. And yeah, the board has received all the materials quite a while ago. So I know it's a one-way common driveway. And there's going to be, just thinking of the site plan overall, there's going to be significant removal of existing trees, though you're retaining the large one right on the corner, I believe,
Yep,
and planting some additional trees in there.
yep.
Yeah, just giving an overview for people who haven't seen the plans, who might be listening or watching. Okay, are there do board members have particular questions or clarifications?
Well, you answered my
please?
first question as to why you were subdividing, because you have separate ownership. So that makes, because you would have eliminated the whole problem if you did one lot, right? So
Yeah.
that was the first question, which is cool. The trees you're planting, I assume you're gonna try and put back maybe maples, that since you're tearing down maples. And if that's the case, maybe you need to look at your spacings on the trees. Looks like they're a little too close together for maples. You said now single family, 'cause we don't actually have, I didn't go through the whole, we don't actually have floor plans in you, do? I didn't think so. So they're all single story, one, two bedroom? Two bedroom?
Yep.
And the reason you went with single story was cost, zoning, what? Just a little bit of
The
everything?
looks of it too in
Look.
that area.
Well, these are all two-story houses around it, so I was just curious
Yeah,
why
but
you.
those are three families right
Right,
there.
each other, okay.
Yeah, we just wanted to keep it one story for,
Okay.
basically handicapped or, whoever,
Right.
elderly people, whoever can live there, so. And it's hard to find first floor apartments. It's hard to find an apartment anyways.
There could be, I was just thinking of family sizes, you look
Yep.
at family sizes, if you have two or three kids, you.
Right.
Those are,
Good for a starter home.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
1,000 square foot for each apartment.
Huh.
Yep,
And these are rentals, not condominiums.
rental, yep.
And the entrance is closest to the corner and the exit's furthest from the
On
corner,
Country
right?
Club Roadside, yeah.
Yep,
That's what I figured.
The Silver Straight is right here.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
that makes sense. Two slots per house, two parking spaces per house.
Yes,
Look at what you got there.
And there's provided signage, I see that, for the entry.
The entrance, yeah, it's got a do not enter. Hopefully we get a good rent out of Terrazzo's for their sign.
Yeah. Yeah, we get food for that.
Food for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a very clever design and use of the property personally. I'm wondering how the garbage guy will handle it. I guess he can come in here and I'm thinking of town of Greenfield, probably not gonna want to walk over here to pick up their garbage, but.
What is the dumpster plan? Is that private trash pickup as part of your rental agreement?
Yeah, that's gonna have
Yeah.
to be private.
Think so?
Yeah.
Because I know I saw a recent discussion with the town, their new, the person they hired for the recycling grant,
Yeah,
that rental properties, each apartment would receive a tote for their trash and
I see.
recycling disposal.
yeah.
I don't know if it's
Huh.
true, but either way, I wasn't sure if that was the plan to park those there or if you were gonna lean towards dumpster storage. But
Yeah, we're gonna be careful of the bears these days.
yeah,
You probably have to put a fence around anyway for sight anyway.
Yeah.
You probably have to put in a. What are you doing about a mailbox? Is there like gonna be a common mailbox somewhere for the post guy, like right here in the middle somewhere, or what are you gonna do about that?
We were just gonna put them by the front door like any normal home, you know?
sure.
Well, ours aren't that way. I live there on the street, some of them.
Yeah.
On the front side of
Yeah.
that. Okay, that's cool. I think it's, I like it.
So you're gonna each own it. One of you owns this one of you owns that one.
Yeah.
How do you, just from a legal standpoint, what if one of you sold your half? How do you manage the fact that you have the dumpsters on one side, you have a shared driveway? That you have to, like, if you sold this one, you have to have permission to go through. Is this, what's the easement agreement there?
That's where the lawyer comes in.
Yeah, it'll be all in the deed.
He'll work something out, Dan Graves. And we haven't split that off yet, you know, as two building lots yet, until we get approved for this, so. Once we do, then we can split that off and then have the lawyer put something together for,
So the idea would be to cross this hurdle first,
yeah.
get that approval, then go through the process.
And why one way? Why not a more conventional parking lot? It's just a lot of,
Probably for
Yeah.
space.
That and coming out into the road, you know? Just
Yes.
Makes a better flow.
Exactly, like Jason said, without having people coming too close to that intersection. You know,
That intersection's tough.
because
Yeah.
Silver Street gets a lot of traffic, so.
Yeah.
So that way you're exiting back away from that stop
Yeah.
sign, you
Any
know?
cars piled up there or something, the stop sign, which they usually go fairly quick. I never really see a line.
Now, just for reference sake, the exit there, is that where the existing driveway is, or is that?
Yes,
Okay,
yep,
I know the lot, I just
Mhm.
trying to picture where the exit would be.
you have 2 spaces per unit? So why wouldn't you just have a single driveway and, 6 parking, or I guess you have 12 parking spaces? You could, I guess, what are the constraints that you're reacting to here? You have a setback here, so you can't go further back there.
exactly.
Or is this the setback line? You just don't have much of an orientation to Silver Street.
Yeah, it's mainly like it's facing Country Club Road, you know?
How many units are you allowed to do here? Is this the maximum?
No, we could actually. do
I think if we wanted to go more, because it goes by square footage of the lot, we probably could have went more and maybe 2 deckers and 12 units or something like that, but
The parking gets really
we
bad.
didn't want to get into
Yeah,
that. And then you have parking issues and all that.
The one looked that great.
I don't think more units would work, perhaps larger, but not more, I don't think. It's like I said, I think the parking would be the biggest problem.
You could figure it out. I think the most units possible in every lot we have is the best. And we're in town. This isn't,
No, no, I don't
and there's
disagree with
nothing
you.
here, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Who's gonna have a problem with that? We could figure out the parking and 2 spaces, if it's rental, 2 spaces per unit's more than enough. So would you consider doing double the density or whatever the maximum is?
No, it's just too much money and those are pretty good sized buildings right there, being 1,000 square feet for each apartment. We're pretty maxed out on the lot line in the back there and trying to get in and out of the driveway, for the width of that lot.
What's your time frame?
We really don't have one. We just want to see what's going to happen here this year with the economy, I don't want to get into something that's,
Yeah.
Good. High interest rates and that type of thing. So we got to be careful.
I'll toss in a couple of questions. One, you mentioned about handicap access. Are these barrier-free entries to these units? There's no curbing or anything like that, or could a wheelchair, for example, get easily
Yeah.
into these units?
No curbing.
No, we can ramp these pretty easily. We're gonna build these on a slab too. So there's some ledge in there, so we don't want to blast.
So are they accessible design, the interior as
Yes.
well?
Yep.
All of them are accessible design interiors.
Yep.
And so to have a unit be accessible, you'd have to build the ramp to add that on. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
We can do it concrete if we want to go that route.
Mhm. Well, I
Um,
just had the impression that was one of your goals, was to have accessible units. That's why I just
Yep.
wanted to
Yep.
clarify.
and they are designed like that, yes.
Then the accessibility will have to be, you'll have to make it to where they can get in that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a elevation code, yeah.
Why no sidewalks?
Um,
There's a sidewalk on Silver Street here,
yeah,
brand new one, according to this whole picture.
and then across the street, there's
Yeah.
a sidewalk.
Other side of
So how do you get to the sidewalk in an accessible path from these units? It's a rhetorical question. I think you should have, seems like you should have the ability to get to this intersection to access the sidewalk on Silver Street.
Yeah. Well, there's a crosswalk.
Here.
Yeah, right. So maybe that'd be nice to put one right there, right?
Yeah, I think that work with the town and the city on that one. But
Something
I
over
mean, at
there.
least be
Yeah.
able to connect at some future date, but have your site plan get you to the lot line,
Yeah.
anticipate that. And I would want to see this building oriented this way and up to the street. And you could put the parking back there, just all the other houses on Silver Street are oriented to Silver Street.
Mhm.
So this would break that pattern. And it's already a different building type sort of, but they are one-story houses now. So you fit in from that perspective. So I think, just this building's less significant because it's sort of tucked off in the back. If you needed to be on that half of the lot for the way you're going to carve it up, that would be fine. But if you turn this one here, is there a disadvantage to that? Did you think about?
Well,
Alternative.
the entrance is over there. So really, basically, these houses are facing Country Club Road, just like the rest of the Country Club Road houses.
The original house that was there was on Face Country Club Road. The one that was torn down. You said the driveway's up here, right?
Yeah, that was over there.
The
It was
driveway.
kind of a weird, yes, you're right. It
I can't
came off-
remember for sure. It was so long ago, but
Came off of Country Club.
This house is facing Silver Street, not Country Club Road.
right.
Yes, yeah, I know. It being a corner lot though, it's like,
That's one of the condos we built there.
So
Yep.
yeah.
to me, Silver Street would take, primacy in terms of what
Mhm.
frontage you should kind of prioritize. And so your property would be turning the corner in that way. This one would face Silver and then that one would face Country Club to pick up the pattern going down that way. And is there a reason why, I mean, I get that from this resident convenience standpoint, that you want to be right on the parking spot, you just kind of go right into your unit.
Yeah.
But if this were on Silver Street, you might be able to rethink the parking in
Put the
some way.
parking behind up
I
here.
mean, this is a lot of pavement. It just kind of feels like a, school or an institutional driveway.
Mhm.
So maybe there's a way to make a more efficient parking lot I would prefer, it seems like a single driveway would be just as good, less asphalt to buy. And then you haven't used up as much of the site on vehicle circulation, and you can do more with the landscaping possibly.
Is something you consider looking at with your architect as far as a?
We could ask him, but I mean, he's really worked on this with all the codes, so what we have there is. Another thing is, you know, these have back. Well, these here have little patios, so we're kind of trying to see that one, kind of facing rather than facing each other, and. That's, we're kind of trying to keep it a little
It's an
private.
interesting thought that
in
Jeff
the
has,
backyards.
have this one turned and this one stayed.
Mhm.
It kind of creates your little void here in the middle, as Jeff was saying. You might be able to get some of the parking out looking.
I would, whatever I don't know where the line is for it. Ideally, from an just an urban design standpoint, this should be here, this should be here, and the parking should be
Mhm.
secondary. But this is, I mean, half of the site is a driveway and a parking lot, and then the buildings kind of fill in the margins. It should be the opposite, just from a philosophical standpoint.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know what that means in terms of like
Yeah.
variances and, but if, unless.
We could look into it, sure.
Yeah, and Eric probably could help just,
Well, part of the problem might be though, that we got split this into two lots now. You know, we got. You know, where does this one, if you turn it, they can park here and they can stay on this lot, but if this one stays in this orientation, these are still gonna have to park here. in front.
well, it could be, you'd pull this forward, you'd have a driveway here and then 6 spaces and 6
They
spaces.
have a common driveway between them that didn't break off. into-
Yeah, and that's the lot line goes through the middle of the
That's,
driveway.
that's what you kind of
It's
suggest.
just a little wider for two.
Same idea, it's still gonna need a common driveway, but the common driveway might be like here, and then you're parking out to behind. The thought. I mean, it's not,
You just, from a
So let me
neighborhood
check in.
standpoint,
Oh, go ahead, Jeff. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I'm just, from a neighborhood design standpoint, that's ideal. You know, setting aside all the constraints and realities of construction and cost. Try not to disrupt it too much.
I just wanted to check in as far as this process. Obviously, there's some fundamental design ideas being tossed about, and I wasn't sure if you folks proposing this you sounded a little open to it. I just wanted to get a sense of where you're
That's
at with
all.
this. If these,
well, I also have a question on that, George. They came here to talk about this common drive. That's
Yep.
really what the purview of our meeting is supposed to be, is whether we approve or disapprove of that. You know, I personally don't have any issue with this design. I think Jeff's brought up some very interesting thoughts and suggestions, and hopefully they would consider looking at it again. But we should not withhold our review of the question at hand for them to do a redesign, right? Am I correct on that, or where we go, where does
Right,
it go?
sure. So the common driveway, as I said at the start, requires a special permit. And so a special permit incorporates a site plan review. So where obviously there's a question of, is the common drive, is that section of the zoning ordinance met? That has specific requirements in it. But then we're also looking at it from the point of view, special permit requirements and site plan review requirements. Now, you can put conditions on a site plan review. You know, how extensive or potentially deemed onerous those could be is something to be discussed. This discussion happening now sounds intriguing. I'm sorry I can't see the map you guys are looking at, but it seems to go beyond any kind of conditions. So that's why I was trying to conditions that would be imposed, for example, by the board. So that's why I was trying to get a sense from you folks who are proposing this, if you're thinking, oh, these are things we might want to look into. So I just want to clarify that as part of the process.
Yeah, the water line comes off of Silver Street, so we can't build over the water line. That'll come in and feed both. Yeah, that's kind of right there. And
Is that existing or is that where you would put it?
well, it is existing off of Silver Street,
That, is this existing or just this?
just that.
Okay.
Yeah,
And there's a water line here too.
If you tap this way, it's right. You tap off of either one, same size line. That's an abandoned.
this one is abandoned, this one is,
Well, I can actually. I mean, you can't let the entire, I mean, I did the water line in my house recently, you know, this is slightly larger, but that can't be the reason why this has to be, you know, suboptimal in every other way. So I think that could be reconsidered or dealt with somehow.
So as I hear it, Jeff, you're talking about the orientation of the more southerly building and the design of the car accommodating area, driveway and parking, and if that could be reduced, so kind of a fundamental kind of re-examination of this, how this site could be used from your perspective optimally. And I guess I'm wondering again if it sounds like you folks are hearing those things and considering them, but I did want to check if you're thinking that you might want to explore these further, because there are these other, considerations.
No, I
you'd have
don't
to-
want to explore it any further. We've submitted this plan and this is what we'd like to stick to.
And so the shared driveway, what would it look like if it wasn't subject to site plan review? Like what is a not shared driveway? So if it had two separate driveways that didn't connect, then you're by right, you don't have to talk to us about it?
Yes, probably, yes, but the problem is being so close to the stop sign there.
Is that your decision or is that the town telling you have to do that?
Between our designer and talking with Eric Torog on this thing and taking a look to what's safe and what would work. They work together on that.
As I mentioned earlier, when we were kind of talking, this board is of a different mindset. We really are looking towards development. We want to work as much with our builders and contractors as we can. But part of also what we're trying to do is optimize and make best use of things. So that's why we're talking to you and asking you the questions we are. We'd like to definitely want to see more housing, no question of mine. We were hoping you might consider, looking at it and making the houses first as opposed to the parking first, which is pretty much
Yeah.
Jeff's
That's a good way.
whole point of view. Make the houses the priority and the parking the secondary. You have every right to say no, which is fine. We'll look at it and then review and say what we think about this. But that's so we're trying to work as a team here again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
of course,
already been
it's
over.
going to be a significant expense on your
Yeah.
part. We wouldn't ask you to incur any significant expense.
There's just
But
a
we would-
lot of setbacks and it was tough getting them where we got them.
Really?
And as far as the parking goes, there has to be two per apartment. So
No,
there's
it's-
six for that one and six for that
But
one.
again, going back to Jeff's point, this one's on the front and this one's on the front, that opens all of this in the middle up, so maybe can do something with the parking. But again,
Yeah.
we put the section just we brought forward, because that's our job.
Well, again, you'd have parking in somebody's backyard. It just, I don't think it'd be
That
good.
gives a little bit of privacy in their backyards too, with their back door.
Not,
You can parking, I would defer to what's best for the neighborhood over what's best for, and they've got are you putting those trees in or
They're
those?
existing.
Yeah. The other advantage to having less of this is there's more room to add housing in the future if you wanted to. And if you thought about, I guess you're pretty much maxing out. This is as far as you're going to take this site and it's sort of done at that point. So George, are we approving the notion of a shared driveway or are we approving this exact design of a shared driveway?
Yeah, we would be approving what is being presented to us. That is correct.
So the only reason I have all these other comments is because I think we have the opportunity to talk about the rest of the project because
Yep.
it's a site plan review.
Yep.
And I understand that you guys are already in the process and have paid however much to get the drawing done.
Yeah.
Do you own the property?
Yep.
I'll throw in my second question. One was about the accessibility of the units. And the other one was getting back to Victor's initial question about you identified, I think, where the trees would be, but I didn't see, maybe I missed it in your plan materials of what type of trees, if they were all the same
Doesn't
type.
say.
Or,
doesn't say, just says trees, but they're taking down all the maples, so I figured, put maples back and.
Like I said, if you do, you
Yeah,
do.
I just wanted to hear from them what their plan was. Thanks.
What did we plant at Silvercrest?
Over to Silvercrest, we planted pears. So they don't get huge, they still get pretty good size, but they stay in control and they look nice. Maybe that's something we'd probably do, so they wouldn't get huge.
And are those native trees?
Yep.
Thank you. So all the trees, because you talked about 9 new trees to replace kind of the 9, they would all be of that type? That was the plan?
Yes, there's one huge pine out there that's in rough shape that's got to come down,
Yeah.
of course. And we've got, let's see,
Two other maples.
I think there's 2 other maples that are coming down.
Yep.
Yeah, and a couple over there, yes.
A bunch of, go down the other thing.
I, for one, really appreciate your retaining the large maple on the corner.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the plan as far as the location of the new trees, and wondered if any of their placements would allow for a larger shade tree, such as Victor was suggesting. Because you have 3 of them are in the parking area. 2 would be between the buildings, right? 2 would be
That one shows.
south and 2 would be to the north. I just wondered if you were considering any variety of those trees, depending on their placement, if a larger canopy might be appropriate for some of those.
Yeah.
Nice big thing.
I didn't understand. We're saying,
Yeah, you're saying, maybe go with a maple or something, or,
well, I was just wondering in because some of the locations you're saying you'd want something that wasn't as large, but I didn't know because they're, different placements, like the ones to the north. I didn't know if they might be possible to be something with a larger canopy. But as I'm trying to picture
Yeah.
it, but
it's a possibility.
thanks.
We'll just have more leaves.
If you had to, in my opinion, if you were to add shade trees, it would be along Silver Street. Just because there's an effort to add tree canopy along a lot of the streets in town, and there's already some trees kind of coming up elsewhere. I mean, this is obviously contributing to that, so
Yeah.
those aren't gonna fall in the houses anytime soon, and they would make for a nice
Yeah.
streetscape.
Maybe just move these 2 forward here.
Or but things that'll grow. I mean, things consistent with what the tree committee does or whatever the town is doing these days is tree plantings. And I get that these might not want to be quite as massive or.
Right,
There's
right.
other, they serve a different purpose, but
Yeah.
just for the sake of Silver Street, add to the tree canopy there.
That sounds reasonable.
And George, are these all conditions that we add, or are we just making suggestions and we're gonna come back to only talking about
This
this?
is a condition, probably. That's a reasonable condition there, but to have them
Sure.
redesigned.
So, yeah, so we can make some suggestions, and we can also condition, the board as a whole could decide to condition certain things. And we'll come back to that at the end of our deliberation. Right now, we're having a back and forth with
Just discussion.
the developers, and so we're just kind of, putting together our thoughts and hearing their reactions at this point. And I wanted to check if we're ready to hear from the public, because I know we've had quite a bit of exchange and didn't know if there's more the board wants to ask.
I just had
of the
one
developers at
question
this
of
point.
on the style of the homes. Is that what is the overall design concept of the exterior of the home? Is it sort of look like what you've built at Silvercrest? Or,
These look like ranches.
okay,
Yep,
so ranch style home,
Yep.
vinyl siding,
yep,
shingle roof.
exactly.
Okay, are we ready to open the public comment period? Very good. So I don't know if anyone is there who might want to offer public comment. I want to give you a chance to come up to the table if you do, or if anyone participate. Stephanie Duclos, please.
No public here.
Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. I think you should approve the plans as presented by the Penfields. They've done a lot of work in this town. They've followed the codes that they need to. I'm sure that these plans that are necessarily available online, but from what you guys are kind of suggesting is a design that they probably worked through with a designer and a planner, understanding the conditions of the property they've owned for many, many years. So I think that given the history of the votes of the planning board and the scrutiny it's exercised on other properties, or not so much scrutiny. And I know that this, there is a Maury Healy backed bill trying to waive certain by right, on permitting restrictions in order to allow for more housing. So, if the density is a political issue, I think it doesn't really need to be sitting here on this review. If they tell you the density is what they can afford to do, and we really want this housing, I mean, it's going to provide much needed housing to our seniors, to anyone that needs a single floor occupancy. And given they're going to have to go through the Conservation Commission, and I'm sure they know that they're in proximity to the issues that they already have on the land that they own. We're asking much more than we'd ever asked for several other people that have come to this board. These are the most extensive plans I've seen sitting on a table, except for maybe a handful of other people that you exercise more scrutiny than others. I think you should approve this as designed. I'm sure that they will be reputable and do, plant more trees if you want, because that seems to be the motto we push around here anyway. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there anyone else who wanted to make public comment on this project? And seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. Okay, so now there's a chance for the board to deliberate. I'll just reference, always think it's helpful to go to the purpose of any section of the zoning ordinance we're applying. And section 200-6.11, driveways and entrances. The purpose of this section is to provide maximum protection to the public through the orderly control of traffic moving onto and off of streets, uniform design and layout of driveways and entrances, adequate vehicle access to a lot, and adequate drainage of surface water. So that's the purpose of that zoning section. And I also want to, for the information of the board and the public, read a few reports we got from city staff. The fire prevention officer had no comment or issues with the proposed project. The engineering superintendent had no comment or issues with the proposed project. There was a memo from Eric Twarg, Director of Planning and Development, and I'll just read through that so it's on the record, everyone hears it. The above referenced parcel is located in the urban residential zone. Proposed use common driveway is a use allowed by special permit. The planning board is the reviewing authority. The zoning ordinance, as far as parking, the zoning ordinance requires 1 off-street parking space per dwelling unit. The submitted site plan shows 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. which would allow for multiple visitors of the residence. Dimensional requirements. All dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance have been met with the exception of the width of the proposed common driveway. The zoning ordinance requires a width of at least 20 feet. The proposed width of the common driveway is 18 feet. Since the common driveway is proposed to be a one-way driveway, an 18-foot width is adequate. Common driveway maintenance covenant. It has been provided as required by the zoning ordinance. And lighting, the proposed 5 new residential scale lighting poles, or it proposes 5 new poles. Spec sheets for the new lighting have not been provided. The board should inquire about the height and type of the proposed lighting. Any new lighting will need to be shielded and downcast. And then Eric offered 4 recommendations if the board were to approve the special permit. 1, the applicant shall submit an approval not required plan to the planning board within 30 days of approval to separate parcel 113-7-0 into 2 lots. 2, the common driveway shall remain a driveway and is not a private or public road and does not meet the standards for a city road. Number 3, all new lighting shall be shielded, downcast lighting with a maximum height of 15 feet. 4, the applicant shall provide the planning board a copy of the executed declaration of common driveway maintenance covenant with proof of recording at the Franklin County Registry of Deeds and shall be made a part of every deed to every lot served by the common driveway. So those are that's Eric's report and recommendations. So open it up to the board for deliberation.
We're trying to go, but I don't know whether we can do that.
Yeah, I've only been on the board for a couple of months. I don't know what my
No, I think it's
limits of authority
I think
are.
we need to make get the questions out there, have people thinking, understand where we're trying to go with this board, what we're trying to do for the community. I think we're trying to maximize housing, opportunities for housing. We're trying to not only match, but enhance existing conditions where we see them with regards to trees and facing the property. So all the suggestions that we made as a board were in light of those processes or thoughts that we wish to incorporate. So it's unfortunate that it doesn't look like we're going to get any kind of a review of what's there, but it is the traditional houses and the property in the city. And those are my comments for deliberations.
Thank you, Victor. I'll offer that there have been, multiple suggestions and thoughts from various board members, and for some of them, more than one board member has been in agreement, but clearly we haven't, as a full board, offered a particular opinion or something like that. But I appreciate that, the suggestions are couched in some of the general principles we've been trying to forward as a board. Any other thoughts about the proposal?
Make a motion.
So, well, we should compile our conditions, right?
Well, one condition is that all of Eric's recommendations are
Okay.
met as conditions.
Yep.
That's our first condition. We can do this one as well.
I had
Yeah.
one question, if I could jump in for a second. I had one question because I saw in the project description, I wanted to ask of the proponents, you thought that you believe there would not be an A&R required. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
So and unfortunately Eric's not here to offer his, because he was suggesting it would be something to submit an A&R. I can't say anything beyond that you didn't think it would be, and he's recommending to the board that it should be a requirement. I guess if that were sorted out and it wasn't necessary, we could alter the condition if we were to make that a condition. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Victor. I just wanted to touch on that because I knew that was at variance with what they were expecting.
I think in lack of any clarification, the best we could do as the board is to say Eric's recommendations are one of our conditions. If something comes out later on between Eric and the Penn feels that it's not necessary, that's fine. I mean, Eric's cleared it up. And we addressed his issue of making the recommendations as far as part of our condition. And I said the other one we had was, trying to shade along Silver
Yeah,
Street.
I think shade trees as opposed to ornamental trees along Silver Street, maybe two more, I don't know whatever the typical spacing is for street tree plantings these days in town. The other piece I'd want to see is just a sidewalk connection to this intersection across the property, and recognizing there's not currently a crosswalk here or a sidewalk here, but maybe there could be at some point. So just being able to get off the property to the public way to take a walk, and maybe anticipating a crosswalk here, you wouldn't be responsible for adding that.
There's no sidewalk over on this side.
No, the sidewalk's here,
We gotta
and
get,
there is a crosswalk here now.
yeah, okay.
So you just have to get to this corner, and then we would encourage Eric or the town to add a crosswalk here at some point.
There's,
Yeah. This on the street.
On this side?
yeah.
Okay.
The rest,
Hereish.
I think getting to this corner one way or another, in a way that, I mean, I get that when you're on your site, it might be a meandering path somehow, but once it gets to the right of way, it becomes orthogonal with the street and looks like it's about to tee up with the existing sidewalk. And I don't think there's a sidewalk on Silver Street on this side.
No,
So that's not really and ideally you'd just put a sidewalk here, but it would just end and kind of go nowhere. So that doesn't seem as valuable.
Right.
And this was partly, Jeff, in the hopes to have, since we've been talking about accessibility, that someone, for example, who are using a wheelchair, that would be able to access without going down the street.
Yeah. So if
Someone who was
accessibility
ambulatory.
seems like it should mean more than just accessibility to your own car. It should also mean accessibility to the rest of the community and the public right of way. So accessibility to the property line, proximate to an existing or future crosswalk.
And
If
it's
you-
always possible. Oh, I was going to say it's always possible someone might not have a car and might be wanting to get to a bus. Or something.
right,
I don't know.
exactly, exactly.
I think to me,
And oh, good.
if we're making a compromise about vehicular circulation, you kind of balance that out with an improved pedestrian circulation plan.
Had you folks considered that, pedestrian accessibility issue at all, or had that come up in your discussions?
No, I think that our thoughts were if somebody wants to get on the sidewalk, they'd have to walk across the street down away from that intersection. That's probably going to be the safest spot. Walk across the street and get on that sidewalk.
But they'd have to walk through a driveway, an active driveway. You could get to it. I guess I wouldn't tell you what the path is
Yeah.
exactly.
But we won't, just every one access.
Yeah, just to be able to get as close as you reasonably can to the existing sidewalk network.
I think as Mark was noting, probably something down here would be, again, further from the intersection. The sidewalk carries past their property.
Yeah,
That's not but then, I mean, ideally follow the desire line. People are going to walk this way because they're trying to go this way. There's less to walk to over there. Or you do both.
Maybe we just word it towards, we would like them to show access to the nearest public crosswalk.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking for. They tell them how to do it, where to do it, but we'd like you to provide your final design should show access, resident access to the nearest public crosswalk.
Pedestrian access, yeah.
I like it. That works.
Need a motion?
Flexibility on how exactly to do it.
All right, so we
Are
have
there any
the-
other potential conditions before moving on to the motion you want to throw out there?
There is fencing around this, right? There is some sort of screening around this pad.
yes, yeah.
Doesn't show.
We'll make it look good there.
No, just want to make sure.
It does say wood fenced in.
Does it? Oh, fence didn't enter that. Okay. I have no more comments.
Is this park? No.
Go ahead.
That's that parking spot works so well. Back out. It's
So does someone
have
want
to
to make
add
a
asphalt
motion?
to make it work
Oh, sorry.
better.
Creative driving.
And so the reason it's a
They
one
get
way,
shipped about, yeah, because this is the open space between them. We could ship all of
yeah, so are any of these spaces,
This is not space.
there's no handicap spaces? So you'll figure that out later? Is that required?
If they're accessible place, you got to have hands, parking, yes.
You gotta have some space for, it. None of these look like they're accessible. Is that, I don't know if that's required or not.
You know, it's residential and not commercial, so I don't think we had to
Okay.
go with that rule, so,
The accessibility is just,
yeah,
you're making the units accessible for market reasons, not
yeah.
code reasons.
Well, if they've got two parking spots for themselves, so they can probably do what they need to do, you know?
Park in the middle. Mhm. Motion.
So is, someone want to make a motion with,
Sure, I'll make a
conditions?
motion that we approve the site plan as presented with the following conditions. Number one, all of Eric Tarwag's recommendations are incorporated as conditions. Two, that there be shade trees planted along Silver Street in lieu of ornamental trees on Silver Street. And three, that there is residential access to the nearest public crosswalk, pedestrian crosswalk.
Pedestrian access to the nearest crosswalk.
Pedestrian access to the nearest public crosswalk. Those are our three conditions. For
is
approval.
there a second?
Second.
Further discussion by the board?
Is there a path to making those happen? Does that seem reasonable?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep, definitely.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in
Well,
favor?
One other
Oh,
just general
wait.
comment, just because I'm new. I acknowledge that the plans are very developed and probably expensive, but that doesn't really matter for us. You should, I mean, we'll talk to Eric about it, but it's great to see things in their earliest form possible, as a napkin sketch. We can provide very quick feedback. And I don't know how much,
I don't know how, yeah, that's a very good idea, but I don't know how that actually works.
yeah, just as a suggestion. In the event that we have more leverage and we feel like being pushier, and we had a chance to talk before and just kind of like the member of the community said, you've owned this lot for a long time. There's lots of reasons why you made the decision you did. It's not evident to me. I don't know very much about the site. So so bring us along for the ride in a way that doesn't slow down your process. You know,
Yeah,
don't wanna
it
slow
was,
anything
it
down.
was, I mean, these things are put in there as good as they can. If you take this thing, I mean, our property line is right here. You take this big thing and turn it, it's bigger than you think. And it really,
We're gonna trust you on that.
Yeah.
We just
It
want to
really
bring forward
just-
this
No, no,
again.
no,
played with it
Yeah.
and the designers did,
yeah,
It
I'm a
was,
designer too. So
well,
I think that
it,
I'm not adding, stress or conditions to this. It's just for next time. It'd be
Yeah.
great to have
Yeah.
a chance to talk about it and understand
Yeah.
why you make a decision. Not to say we're going to dispute them, but just make
Yeah.
this process easier.
And Jeff, I would say the point you're making is a process issue. And
It's
that
not a-
rather than this being
Right.
something that the developers know about, it's more important of a collaboration between ourselves and Eric as the town planner. And if the
Yeah.
board, so we can have a discussion of this at the next meeting when Eric's there. If we want to suggest Eric might want to, bring earlier iterations
that's
of
fair.
designs by the board for input or something like that.
Okay, good point. Because you would work with
We
them
can
for a
add
while
that
too.
as a, right, we can add that as an agenda item.
Great, thanks.
All right, so if there are no further comments, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Thank you very much for
Congratulations.
the presentation
Okay,
and the
thank you.
discussion.
You.
Best wishes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
All
guys.
set.
So good to talk to you in the future.
yes, yeah, yeah.
So the next agenda item is, we have a couple of discussion items. This is, the first one is proposed amendments to the open space cluster development ordinance.
Ta-da.
I'm guessing in the far distance, that's Allison.
This is do you have it?
I have it
Okay.
electronic,
Do you want
but,
it paper?
um,
Whatever.
no, I'll just take it.
You went through the trouble of printing it.
Jeff's not wrong. If you have it printed, I'll.
Yeah,
take
it's
it.
much easier.
I can pass it.
So thank you, Allison, for coming back.
Of course. So what I did, it seemed like one of the main sticking points last time was trying to get a better handle on what the density bonus system would look like on the ground. So what I did was I took a parcel in Greenfield and then did my best to go through the ordinance as it is drafted and then apply the system that's laid out in terms of determining the number of lots and units. Did you all have time to take a look at it or?
Yeah,
Okay. Does it make sense?
yeah.
Okay. So after going through this, my main questions for you all is, do you think we should put a cap on the density bonus? And are there categories that you feel are missing
Categories of what?
for the density bonus
It's
system?
like the,
Yeah, are there things that you wish that were there? That was another discussion point last time, and that's why I sent back around the memo. It had the long list from Shelburne and Sunderland.
right.
What is sort of the average on the density bonus cap?
So the highest
Do you see that?
yeah, I looked across examples from Eastern Mass and locally, and then on the Cape because that's the other rural area in the state. So the highest cap I saw was 50. Sunderland has 40, Shelburne is 25%, and then Cape Cod, their model bylaws is 15. But it's up to you all in terms of if you even want to put a cap on it.
What is the basis for their caps? The number? It's not like.
I know, I feel like it just ends up being, well, this town did it, so let's do what they did.
It's really what it is. The precedents and the examples.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, I don't, 50 just seems to be the standard. I assume it's because, I mean, realistically, you wouldn't want to have a runaway situation where you have a density bonus system and then all of a sudden the developer could reasonably triple the amount of housing that's on the site, and then
but at a certain point.
you're going to be capped by water and sewer anyway.
And setbacks and other.
Right.
So, I mean, one argument is that there is no density limit
Mhm.
from a land use perspective.
Right.
You're just, the other things eventually come into play, and that's what makes sure that it still works on the site. I guess what would be the next soonest, like what would be the next thing that stops you if you just keep adding? We just made this list, 100 criteria, and each one's 10%,
Right.
and you
Right.
can get 2,000% bonus,
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think is like what are the parameters that you're gonna run up against instead that are gonna stop you from adding more and more and more?
Water, sewer, setbacks. Yeah, I was just curious if,
And it would be, I mean, I think it probably should be, what's the regulatory? Water and sewer is not a regulatory thing, that's just a practical, and you can overcome that theoretically. But don't we have there's a minimum lot size that.
correct. So when I applied the density bonus, like based on shrinking the square footage down from 40,000 square feet to 8,000, that's the lowest you can get. You technically could get 168 units, which is,
There's probably a parking
I think,
dimension that.
6 or 7, right,
Right.
parking, yeah. But just based on the lot size features.
I just don't think that density is a relevant limit.
Okay.
I personally think the things that we care about are the other stuff. I mean, that's enough. It's just like a redundant way to regulate what gets built.
Right.
But it's nice leverage. I mean, it's helpful. if you're gonna allow more and more and more, you want to get certain exactions out of the developer that don't compromise the feasibility. And none of these are a big ask, really, right? I mean, do you feel like some of these are bigger asks than others, or are they kind of?
No, I mean, the only maybe bigger ask depending on the site would be protecting land over the minimum requirement. But I mean, that's just a limitation. Not, I don't think it's a big ask, but it may be less realistic in some cases. And again, OSCD protects land contiguous to an already protected area. I mean, that's also said dependent, but otherwise, I think I would hope that all of these are relatively easy.
Of these design features that are listed, are these just a typical list or?
So this is back in 2022 with the board. We took examples from the region and picked what seemed to be most relevant or of interest to Greenfield. And this is the list that we compiled. In reviewing this, what I found was a lot of other communities only offer density bonuses for deeded affordable housing, accessible homes. And that was kind of it. That was all they were incentivizing. So I think the board at that time was interested in trying to.
Can we define affordable housing for me? When I hear affordable housing, I think Section 8, government housing, subsidized housing. What do we mean by affordable housing in Greenfield? It's affordable housing in Greenfield.
I guess how is it defined in the? Which,
I don't know. That's my question. What, we throw it around, but I don't know what that actually means. To me, affordable housing is a $200,000 home. Kids nowadays can afford to buy a $200,000 home.
Right.
$400,000 home might be out of their reach, but a $200,000 home is probably pretty typical. So to me, that's affordable housing.
Right. So that's what we call it capital A affordable housing versus lowercase a affordable housing. So the $200,000 house, that's lowercase a affordable. Capital A would be where there are restrictions so that the rent could never be X% more than the area median income or something like that. Like there are like that development in Sunderland that's run by the housing authority. I'm thinking like those rents are capped based on income.
but is that something, I guess to your point, is that something that is defined as part of this? If we were to say affordable housing, and then further on in this, affordable housing is.
Yeah, so
Yes.
in this, we put affordable housing requirements set by chapter 40B. So that's like a state law. Yeah,
That's a standard way to do it. That's right.
Capital, that's the capital.
that's the
So
capital.
there is
Yeah,
a
both.
Mass General Law standard way. of-
Yeah, and it's not a
Defining.
relative term. It's a specific.
Okay,
That's what's that.
Yeah.
as long as it's defined somewhere
Yeah, no, you're not
and not
responsible
just
for.
got it.
Again, I don't think it should be limited to capital A, it should be both.
Well, we can't require that. I just don't think we can meddle in at that level.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just say, well, you have to only charge $200,000 for these houses.
I don't know, but we should be striving to try and get it to where developers can build a $200,000 house. You know, that's what I was talking about earlier. We should try and make it to where when a developer looks at the land, they can say, I can make money on a $200,000 house here.
Yeah.
So they build $200,000 houses, then we have the people come in that can afford those, and we don't just go with, you know, the big people can afford a $500,000 home, and the people who have fixed rent.
Mhm.
We need to create our middle class too.
Mhm.
That's what I'm trying to do. I don't want us to be, you know, so polar. We have wealthy, we have fixed income. You know, I don't want.
Well, I think by doing something like this, you have the economy of scale. Like if you can build more homes, you can balance the profitability, maybe.
But again, I think you know,
It's an indirect path to
Yeah.
encouraging affordability because you can't do it directly outside of qualifying it as satisfying 40B. But that's,
And it
I would
also-
agree with you. Great point.
Sorry, Jeff. That item says contains dwelling units that can be counted toward that. It doesn't say they're all.
no, I didn't think it did. I didn't think it did, but I just don't
Yeah.
want that to be the only kind of,
Yeah.
our only thought of what's an affordable house. That's what I'm trying. We need to change our mindset.
Well, one way to do it is to make sure that we could talk about the bedroom count or the square footage.
I don't know, maybe look at the zoning laws. Why do we need a 40,000 square foot lot? Maybe we change the zoning laws where it's 15,000 square feet. Or even 12,000 square feet in the R rural residential. Why is it a 40,000 square foot lot?
That's a good question.
You know, maybe that's something we bring forward to the planning board, because that right there, you cut the price of the lot in half, you cut the price of the house down. So maybe you can come in and dwelling and put more houses and blah, 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 blah.
And that's sort of what's happening here is we're taking a big lot and effectively carving it up into
Right.
smaller
Right.
pieces.
Right.
So so how small do we get here? 8,000.
8,000.
100 by 80. Typical lot.
And the reason for that is
It's the lowest you can
smallest
go.
we have in
Smallest
our
you can
town
go.
now.
Does it have to be that small? But again, maybe the developer doesn't even need to, again, if the lots themselves
Yeah.
are smaller than the.
And also depends again, on the water sewer. So out in, the margins of the rural residential area, there's no sewer. So realistically, the smallest size lot would probably be 25,000 square feet.
Pretty much everything white on that map.
Yeah.
Doesn't have sewer.
We were talking about that last night.
Yeah.
We get smaller central plants, and
Right.
create smaller central sewage
Right.
plants where we don't need to do septic systems of
Right.
all the houses. There's a
Right.
technology that we can put in there to where, maybe the houses have those self dissolving septics
Mhm.
or something like that. You don't need the big septic fields and things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, the main benefit here is trying to get developers to use this so that they can shrink the lot sizes.
Go back, it gets the topic on hand, do you think it should be caps? I don't think it should be any caps.
Okay.
I agree with Steve on how they need for caps.
Those are the main questions on that in terms of, I'll have another question about this after we look at this. The other main point of discussion in June was, if we want to change or keep the protected open space requirement in the rural residential zone. So in the 2022 revision, the board had discussed increasing it from 25% to 50%. And I pulled some examples locally. In Leiden, they require 80% of the parcel to be conserved. Shelburne requires 50. I mean, yeah, the Leiden example is very different, but Sunderland requires 40%, and then the Mass Audubon best practice is 50%. So it's again, it's
Up to us.
it's up to you, and
No reason.
Yeah.
I just don't think we have enough developable land. You're taking it off the table. I don't even like the 25%. I'm willing to say 25%.
If you don't like I mean, so the normative or the conventional way to do it, if you didn't want to engage with this rule, would be to just carve it up into what's the existing lot size? Minimum?
the 40,000.
If you leave it at 50, you incentivize.
It's 25. The proposals to change it to 50.
Yeah, the proposal is to double their.
One thing I think we talked about before was you shouldn't lose credit because you have slopes greater than 20%.
Yes, I did change that. Yeah, on page 3, 100%.
So that could be part of your open space, your not built area. The purpose of the open space is not for recreation or access, it's for habitat.
So if the back edge of your property was a slope, that counts as part of your protected land.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no reason why, in my opinion, it shouldn't.
No, I agree.
Floodplain.
I think that was I think that was an important distinction to add, and I'm more comfortable with a higher percentage knowing it includes those types of parts of the property, as you're saying, Jeff. It's not how you can use it. It's just that protecting it.
One question would be, if we went from 25 to 50, do we lose density? Or do we just change the development typology so that it's an apartment building instead of houses? I mean, so that the same number of units just takes a different form.
Yeah, I mean, that would really depend on, I mean, what I was looking at too, when, I was putting together these examples, the topography of what's left to be subdivided just happens to be a little funky. So I imagine that that'll be more site dependent and you will end up with more land conservation because there's really steep slopes where there is land to be subdivided.
I guess it would depend on, again, density. If you want to try and get, maybe you'll get 100 single-family homes, but you can get 200 apartments. Sure, that may be, but I don't think we limited the cap on multifamily either. I think we kind of took that out. We said there should be no cap on multifamily. I think that's what we're leading on that. So that you could, if you go over to the 50%, you could go all multifamily and still get the number of units in there that we're really far. We got rid of the cap on it. I believe we were talking.
Yep.
So just so I understand this density bonus appropriately, I'm gonna try to capture this one. So if we increased to the 50%, but we don't cap the density bonus, couldn't you essentially win back that 50% by funding all of the initiatives of the density bonus?
Probably.
Because then you're essentially, you're meeting what is determined to be priorities,
Right.
but you're also then not restricted.
Understood. And I'm old school. I'm thinking, single family houses, people with yards, backyard with a barbecue, as opposed to condominiums where everyone's right next to their neighbor and listening to them all night long.
Mhm.
So that's my bent or bias or whatever. So that's why I'm all for building as many as we can, but I'd like to see some people have some. I mean, I'd like to see some private homes as well. I don't want us to turn into all condominiums and multifamily because we need to get the housing. It'd be nice if you'll have some single family housing built on some regular basis.
Well, there's lots of single family homes in town to choose from. They're not all available at the moment or affordable.
Again, that's going back to the affordability, it'll be nice. It'd be nice if we created development like my wife grew up in on the other side by the Sunoco station across the street, Warner Avenue and all that.
Mhm.
Cape Cods, row after row, Cape Cods, nice little neighborhood. It'd be nice to have something like that occur again.
I think that's doable also.
Lots of Sears homes.
Yeah, right.
The spirit of a rule like this is to do just what you said, which is to take the allowable density and just kind of squeeze it over to one side so you don't waste all the land with development if your concern is preserving the public space. I noticed that one of the condition that if you allocate more than 50% of the allowed lots for multifamily, you only get a 10% bonus. It seems like
Should bump it to
should get
20.
well, you're increasing the density pretty significantly by making X number of lots multifamily.
Right.
So you should be, if you do multifamily, you should be allowed, then it's like you do that, but then you can't actually have multifamily because you're up against your density limit. You only got a 10% bonus for that one. I guess if you couple that with other bonuses, it scrape it back. To me, percent can be higher if it doesn't impact the potential to add the same number of units.
That makes sense to me because it is, or I would either increase the bonus or decrease how much of the development has to be multifamily homes in order to get the bonus, right? Either of those.
Oh, the percentage. Decrease the percentage, Allison.
Yeah, either increase the bonus for doing 50% multifamily or lower the amount
Thank you.
of multifamily units to get the 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 is that's a high number.
That's high.
Yeah.
So either decrease that or increase the 10.
Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Two-family counts as multifamily, I see.
Right. So, I don't know, maybe 30 would make more sense, 20, 25, 30?
With the difference 35%. I was thinking 40, but
So what happens when you have two? Is the expectation that a multifamily is likely going to be just a duplex, not a apartment building? Is there
I mean, I was thinking just based on if you're shrinking down the lot sizes, then you would want to go up.
let me ask this question as well. Multifamily is considered a single house that has more than one person. Condo associations are not multifamily, right? Those are what?
I'm defining like a multifamily house is
Multifamily is
like there would be like 2 apartments.
one building with multiple residences in it, not multiple buildings next to each other.
Correct.
Well, let me just throw out there that in our zoning ordinance, multifamily dwelling is defined as a structure containing 4 or more dwelling units.
In a single structure.
Yes.
They should probably be consistent with that rule.
Mhm.
Whereas if there were 2 units, it's defined in our ordinance as a 2-family dwelling. And then there's a 3-family dwelling. So it's pretty specific that it's multi is 4 or more.
So, yeah, then I would change that wording as well. So it's 2 or greater, 2 family or greater.
And is that a by right use? Is that breaking some other rule? Because I mean, the initial premise is that we're just making smaller single family lots.
Mhm.
And kind of consolidating them on part of the lot. And we start talking about different development typologies. Is there a constraint, or can we just open it up?
According to the dimensional table, the lot size would have to be a little bit bigger. I think it goes up by 2,000 square feet for each unit.
In the residential A?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you just would follow those rules?
yeah.
Okay. But there'd be an allowable use?
Yes.
As they say, the devil's in the details, isn't it?
Is there a reason why were there any bonus criteria in these other towns that are not in our table that you think maybe should be?
Yeah, I remember going through this and we scrapped protecting forest land and establishing a quote unquote green certification by the Forest Stewardship Council because that would be a headache for you all to try and certify. What else do we scrap? Oh, implementing a significant ecological restoration project. Again, that, that would be difficult to define.
They just don't have to pick that one.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just going through them and
Okay.
that's why we got rid of them.
Yeah.
And then I think we kept pretty much everything else.
Sure.
I don't know if you would want to do something more specific to rooftop solar. There is a design feature that contains units that have a maximum HERS rating of 0, so net 0. You could also put in a feature that says something along the lines of you get a bonus if the homes get X% of their power from solar or are estimated to.
Sure.
Is that like advocating for like a solar field as part of the development?
No, advocating for rooftop solar.
Strictly rooftop?
Yeah.
If they were to put a solar field as part of the development, that's something that they could do.
They,
Allowed use in this district.
yeah, you'd have to check.
I think ground mounted solar in the city is the ZPA.
Yeah.
I think it all requires special.
I mean, I think the best thing to do here would be to incentivize the rooftop solar. So then they're also like orienting the house for solar access and people can own their arrays.
I would say even just orienting the houses for solar alone is a good thing, even if you don't put it on there.
Right.
Because if you don't do that, that home will never be good for solar. You're like, you're taking away value from that, potential value from that homeowner.
Yeah.
If you add the panels, great.
Would you want those as two separate categories?
Maybe you get a little bit extra if you actually put the panels on.
Yeah.
Right.
Another one is just picking up on trees again.
Yeah.
Protecting mature trees on the site somehow.
Mhm.
I don't know, within the development lots. Because you're obviously protecting them in the open space area.
Yeah.
But if you could be
Prioritizing them in the actual building
within
space.
the parcels that you're
Mhm.
creating, like, again, orienting the houses so that you, because that'll make it a much,
Right.
it's consistent with other priorities of the city. And if you're starting from scratch, you have the opportunity to place the houses relative to the trees however you want.
Right.
I think it's great. Thank you for
Yeah.
putting this together. It's really helpful just to see the examples and
Yeah, it was interesting to look at it because, yeah, I was, looking at this sort of like, oh, wow, it's gonna be tough, but it's possible. And then did we come to a consensus on 25 versus 50%?
Board looks like they're going with 50, I'll go with the board.
get a bonus for going above the minimum.
Right, so that's, if you wanted to lower it a little bit and then hope that that would incentivize someone, if you wanted to make it more flexible so that someone could rely on that.
Is there an argument for not having if you're having something that's a little more contextual? Just
What do you mean?
like so you're always starting with one, are you always starting with one parcel and then like if you're starting with a massive parcel, this percent makes sense. If you're starting with a smaller parcel, this percent makes sense. I just wonder if there's any logic to
I think,
the gradient.
yeah, and because more likely in the rural residential, it's going to be the much larger lots. So the 50% could be more beneficial there. And that's why we're keeping it low in the other districts, but
Okay, yeah. If you can still get the same number of units, more or less, on 50% of the land, then I don't have a problem with 50%. Personally.
Say that again, Jeff, if you would.
The percent is less significant to me than the number of units you can get. So if you can get 100 units on 75% or on 50%, then let's have more open space. And just a denser development, which would probably lend itself to lower costs, more affordable, smaller units. And when someone actually tries one of these things, we can.
yeah. Go through it again.
So are you suggesting, Jeff, for the overall percent, a certain number, or?
I guess I was saying I'm okay with. Well, Victor, you said 35.
Yeah,
And then there's a provision that you can go 15% above. You mean, you could,
That's a good compromise. 35 is a good compromise.
Oh, okay, 35.
I mean, what we just witnessed was a developer that had the opportunity to build more housing and chose not to. So
You're right.
people are gonna, there's plenty of room to not do the max. Most people probably won't do the max. But most people are gonna not make the most use of the land either, as we just saw. So maybe 50% is better because it forces them to be more thoughtful about how they deal with the other half.
Up to you.
And so
It's up to the consensus of the board.
Allison, you said that the range amongst the precedents was, well, 80% is just,
Really high.
Yeah.
But it's typically around 50,
and you said,
50 to 60.
and Mass Audubon said 50.
Yeah, they said that's like the best.
And their concern is wildlife and habitats, and that's the purpose of this district. Like, that's kind of the inspiration. So I would say, I'm good with 50 for those reasons.
I am also, I don't know, Peter, if you have a stance on that or?
I'm comfortable with 50. I think it accomplishes the goal of what we're actually talking about today. And there's plenty of opportunities for developers to exercise design features that would net them a little easier retainage. So
Agree with the board.
Great. I think that was really all that we talked about from last time. Those were the changes. So are you all comfortable with moving on to the next step in terms of bringing it to, I believe the process is to have a joint public hearing with the Economic Development Committee?
Right, that would be, so that would require, Allison, for our board to initiate this process. So we
Okay.
have to be comfortable with what the final version is to initiate it. And
I
then
see.
that
Okay.
triggers the
I
joint
see.
public hearing.
So I would
I-
finalize this, then you would vote on it, and then we move on to that phase?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me ask you, you had sent amongst the materials, the latest draft of the ordinance. Would it be
Yep.
helpful to kind of walk through the comments you have in there, just in case there are any questions?
The comments that are in this one didn't change from the June meeting, other than, the highlighting the 50%.
Okay, I think I saw that, right?
Yeah, they were just outlining all the changes that we made back in 2022. I just commented where we had discussed changes.
Gotcha. So, we did have, potentially, as an action item this evening, approval of, or rather deliberation on an initiation of these proposed amendments. I don't know if the, board would want to wait to see actually in writing, what Allison had. We're meeting next in 2 weeks because
Oh,
this
great.
meeting was delayed. We're meeting on August 1st.
Okay,
And if we could receive that from Allison by then, and we might have a full board then, which would be nice to be able to forward something.
Yep.
So significant. Is the board comfortable with deferring the actual deliberation initiation until next meeting?
Yes.
Or is
I
anyone
would be fine
object?
with
I
that.
should-
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna be away on that day. I didn't realize that was our next meeting. But I trust you guys to carry I might be able to join remotely, but I'm not sure.
okay. Thanks, Joe. And does that seem doable to you, Allison, within 2 weeks to get that to us?
yes,
these
August
changes?
1st, that date sounds familiar, so I think I have another board meeting that night, but I'll double check my calendar, and if I can zoom in, I will, and if I can't, then you can just let me know what you decide and then what the timeline would be for the public hearing and
Sure.
taking it to city
Well,
council.
My sense is, and I'll other board members chime in if needed, that this was really essential. It's more just having what we discussed today written down. So
Yeah,
we can
yeah, yep.
clearly, in making a decision, we have it all current in front of us in writing. So I don't think that your participation is necessary on the first, unless, like
Okay.
I say, other board members disagree. I think the priority would be these is a couple of discussions you've had with us, plus the ones that would involve city council members. So,
Yep. Okay,
okay,
great.
very good. Any last thoughts or questions for Allison before we let her go? Or
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your input.
take care. So the next item is a discussion item also on potential amendments to the major development review ordinance. And for some framing, I had sent and I'm sorry it wasn't more clearly labeled on the front. I know it identified it in the email, but the first couple pages labeled changes to the MDR in context of the sections affected. This was written by Linda Smith, the then chair of the planning board I'm forgetting the date, but it was in 2019, just prior to the board's deliberation on recommendations about these changes, and then the city council's vote on those changes. So I just wanted people to have that for some background context, and then the other 3 pages were directly copied from the zoning ordinance as it is now, as far as the major development review, which incorporates those changes that were made in March of 2019. So this is say again.
I know I printed it out, but I didn't bring it with me for some reason.
Oh,
Okay.
so I know this is kind of just an open. We had talked about wanting to, look into this. There had been, some recent efforts to adjust one of the changes where it had gone from in section B, number 1, it had gone from 1,000 trips per day to 3,000 in the general commercial district. And there were a couple of proposals made first by a counselor, initiated by a counselor, then initiated by a citizen petition to reduce that to 2,000. And that those did not pass the city council, but because the planning board had given a positive recommendation for each, it's still possible to propose that. And one of the comments at the more recent deliberation was that was from the citizen petition. At least one counselor had said they would feel more comfortable with some change like that was coming from the planning board. So that was part of the context of suggesting we examine this. Yes.
So I just want to try and get some background for myself and some understanding. There were proposed changes to make it less of a need to come before the planning board. Was that because there was a perceived or real delay in project approvals because the planning board was taking why did they want us not to review?
Yeah. This had an unusual context. This was when there was a pivotal vote on funding for the library. And there was one counselor who essentially made a deal with the council president that this one counselor wanted the MDR adjusted so it would be less triggering of having a major development review. And so the council president and this counselor got together, the two of them, and came up with these proposed numbers. The council president at the meeting where it was discussed, acknowledged there had been no basis for these numbers. They were just kind of, they were just kind of made less strenuous, but they didn't have any comparisons with other communities or anything like that. They just kind of, the two of them just came up with those, and it was pretty starkly, because if these changes were made, that counselor offered to provide the pivotal vote so that the library funding would be included, approved. That was the context.
Okay.
It was pretty
So-
unusual.
So I think going back to the whole situation we just had with the builders over here, the sooner we can look at things, the better chance we have of trying to make suggestions and favorable changes, and perhaps if we have I heard what you said earlier that it's not really the board who's thinking the way that I'm thinking, but that we could have some input that could be positive for the community if we can see the project early and if we could see all the projects. So the changes have already been made and we're talking about moving them back. Is that what has happened? You're telling me?
Well, what I'm saying is the changes were made in March of 2019 in the context I explained.
Okay.
It was referred to as a compromise or a deal.
Right.
And so at the time, in response to, Chairman Smith's memo there, the planning board had a long deliberation about this, and the planning board voted 4-1 against these changes. But the council voted to approve them. So over the following few years, we intermittently on the planning board would discuss, should we re-examine this? Because, my comment at the time and subsequently has been, it might have been good politics, but it wasn't good planning. And it just seemed, unfortunate that it was done in that way. It seemed like a compromise in some ways, not just, a deal, but a compromise of the purpose of, and so basically it would result in less scrutiny for larger projects. And we had two recent examples of the Aldi's and the Starbucks. Both of those, under the previous 1,000 vehicle trip standard or under the proposed 2,000 vehicle trip standard, would have required a major development review, which is basically a higher level of scrutiny and leverage on the part of the planning board on behalf of the city. But I'll point out, no, as Eric has said, no project that fell under major development review has ever been denied. They've all been
I don't think it's a
approved.
question of denial. I don't think it's a question of denial. I think it's a question of reviewing them and see if they're fitting our vision for the town. So the fact that we can't even review it goes back to something I don't know if it was Peter or Jeff mentioned the last ones. You had a tire center built down there in the corner of a high street and, still with no landscaping, no nothing. It's just a big empty thing. So, we need to look at these things so we can try and make suggestions and such. So what is our recourse? Since it's already been approved, then I take it to town council would have to vote again to move them back again. So is that something that we initiate, or how do we actually get that?
I think what we're doing is changing the way that, the way the rules govern how we operate, just in general. And I mean, the way we talked about it before was, to me, there's two issues. One is what triggers our review. And do we think that this makes any sense, the triggers that are there now? And then two, what purview do we have? If we're just telling people where the trees and sidewalks go, or can we tell them where the buildings go? So and one of those is part of the master development review, and one of them is part of the site plan review. And both need to be amended for us to do a better job of serving the community's broader interests. Just to tell Starbucks they need native plants, I mean, that's great. I'm glad they're doing native plants, but there's a lot more to be desired.
I just use it as an example. I understand exactly, you talk about moving the house, I agree, but if we can't look at the plan, we can't do anything. So
we don't have the authority to do certain things, but we have an opportunity to modify that.
I'm all for that.
So in the context of the major development review, the triggers are the big thing everyone's been fighting about. And it's typically in the context of traffic generation. But I don't think that traffic generation is the most important thing that we're supposed to care about. I mean, it's kind of an arbitrary feature of whatever the land use happens to be. Like I would suggest that the trigger should be it's on Main Street. Like that's the trigger. Doesn't matter if it's got 2,000 cars or 20,000 cars. The impact is that it's on our Main Street or it's on whatever roads are designated like High Street. It's on High Street. It shouldn't look ugly.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Traffic has nothing to do with it. So traffic could be one of the criteria if we need to keep it on there. But I think the desire is to have triggers that bring us into the fold and give us authority for projects that have significant impacts on the things that people care about in this community. And you can get through these, as has, I think, been demonstrated, you can avoid development review for projects that do have a significant impact on the things people care about. So that means there's a problem that needs to be fixed with tighter rules or stronger triggers.
So do we need to get someone to draft a new set of triggers and then, okay, so who does that? How do we do that? How do we draft what we think it should be?
Well, at the, just to back up a little bit, at the time these changes were proposed to the MDR, obviously the planning board majority felt they shouldn't be changed. They should stay the way they were. We can propose, we could propose going back to where they were. Obviously the recent proposals about traffic had not been to suggest going back to 1,000, but a compromise of 2,000. And I'll point out too that in these other sections, like section B4 is about the size of the project. Section B5 about expansion of existing use was totally eliminated. That doesn't exist anymore. So if it is expanding by 20% or more, that would then of the existing, criteria, that would have triggered another a major development review. That was totally eliminated in its entirety. That
would have triggered on the project we started with.
So,
right?
well,
which one was that now?
12 cars
Say again.
per day would have been well over a 20% increase in vehicle trips per day.
yeah. From zero.
Which project are you talking about here?
The one brought forth earlier from
Penfield.
Penfield on Country Club.
Oh, would that be a major development review? I don't believe so, no. Well, that's interesting. I see what you're saying. That if it's zero traffic, then it's an increase. Interesting. So this is.
So how do we go about drafting? I think the question is if we wanted to have the council again review, bring it forth to the council again, do we sit here at a meeting and draft it? Can we do that?
Yes. Yes. So
One of our meetings would be just a draft for conditions that we feel should be major development review triggers.
Right. We could. I mean, this started with the idea of looking at how those parameters were changed, and like I say, one section was eliminated entirely, and we could go back and examine those. I know Jeff is suggesting we add, some different perspective or criteria. So
Main
it's
streets
for
of the
us as a
town.
board. Yeah. So it's us as a board to discuss it, deliberate it, and then come up with a proposal, and then we would do the same thing we're talking about with the open space cluster development. We initiate it, and so then it goes before a public hearing of us and the Economic Development Committee, and then it goes before the council for a vote. So that's the process.
Makes sense. So we're redoing our master plan right now too. And that's something we're gonna be
Portion of
involved.
it, yep.
I mean, one of our roles is to implement or shepherd or be a steward of the master plan.
Mhm.
And so I think you could start by just coming up with triggers that give us more power, which is tempting, but the basis for it, the more defensible basis for it is that here's what the town wants to accomplish. Here's the role we think the planning board could serve in helping with that. And here are the shortcomings of the enabling rules that exist today, such that we can start by pointing out how, okay, this is what you want to accomplish. Here are all the ways that someone can avoid doing what you want to accomplish because we don't have these powers.
Right.
So then the basis for the triggering parameters are the ones that kind of relate to the things that the town wants to accomplish. So like it being on Main Street, if town wants downtown to be a more walkable, vibrant, so on and so forth place, then anything that's going to have a significant impact on that potential should be something we review. And then the criteria we're looking for are the things that support that vision. And we can like push back on things that are against that vision.
Support that 100%.
Yeah, go.
Good.
So should we like put that as
No.
an agenda item for like a September meeting? Because, you know, that we go ahead and work on this, or, because I don't think we have time for August, right? So,
It would be it seems like it needs to be in sequence with, I guess, George, do you think there's a logical way to sync up with something else that's going on anyway? So this doesn't feel like something we're just coming up with because we feel like it. It's in response to the master plan that's being developed. And
Well, it certainly, you know, we could try to, when this, the master plan was around, when this change was made, and certain, you know, I think the master plan was cited as a reason to not make the changes that were suggested, but certainly we could, you know, consider the master plan for any proposals or cite it as supporting rationale. Like I say, the last 3 pages here are the current major development review, you know, starting with the purpose as always. And what we could do is all read through that and could have it in the context of those changes that were made, 5 years ago now, and come up with our individual proposals or perspectives, and then we could, like you're saying, Victor, have continue this discussion in September and see how close we are to some consensus for initiating a process.
is there, the other thing is the SPGA, so the Special Permit Granting Authority.
Yep.
Is sometimes us and sometimes the zoning board, right?
Zoning Board of Appeals, yep.
Depending on if it's what's the trigger for that?
That is,
Using this for something else.
say again?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you see, it had been the planning board until March of 2019, and some of that has been, you know, you wouldn't think that would be a political thing per se, but you know, there has been some shifting back and forth, like with the ADU. It went back and forth from the planning board to zoning, back to planning. So yeah, different people have had different rationales, I think, or perspectives for pursuing that and deciding that. So it did change. I don't know if there was a particular rationale for the change from the planning board to the ZBA for the MDR. I think Eric has said he thought it makes more sense for the planning board to be involved with the MDR, but that could be part of our discussion if we want to make that as a proposed change.
I forgot that. So at the moment, we're changing the rules so the zoning board of appeals we're not kind of in standing, we don't have the authority to implement this at this time. We're not
we wouldn't be the ones, the authority, we wouldn't have the authority to review these. That is correct. It would be on behalf of the town for whoever's reviewing it, obviously, trying to get it more in sync, perhaps with the, how we think it would be helpful to the town. And we could also propose to revert to the planning board. And that may or may not be agreed with if we think that would be,
right.
We could offer a good rationale for that.
that'd be interesting.
What was
But
that?
the outcome of this conversation is that we would work on kind of individually between now and September, kind of make our notes, and then in September we come together and compare them and see how close we are to some consensus.
That sounds like a plan to me, because we can each study the current ordinance and, you know, what it had been, and then come to our individual perspectives and see if there's, you know, additional things we might want to add, and then have a discussion about it and see how close we can come to, you know, agreement. That sound like a reasonable plan to everybody?
Sounds excellent.
It does.
Okay, great. Obviously we have, looking at the agenda, the first action item, the planning board deliberation on the open space cluster we're tabling. And next one is the A&R for 125 Bernardston Road. And I wrote to Eric just because I said, boy, does this look familiar. And he said we had recently approved it.
Thank you.
Who was that?
I don't know.
I want board members to know that I gave him a memo to read to you.
Who was that just left that said thank
Someone
you?
said, someone gave you a memo to read and you didn't read it?
It was Al.
Al? Is that Al?
Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay.
You know, there's a
He
lot-
had
He left
sent
already.
me
So,
something.
yeah.
He had sent me, just to inform the board, he had sent me something. I wasn't totally clear on him wanting me to read it. I kind of did reference some of it. But I'll look at that further.
Okay.
Because he didn't. Okay. So the A&R, as I was saying, had been previously approved. And this is a revision, Eric was saying. Of that, because this is the one that had the strange 5 foot, you know, gap between the property line.
Mhm.
Remember?
Yeah.
So he said it's a revision of that. I didn't hear back from him what the revision was, how it was revised. I assume it would supersede the previous A&R plan. It, you know, still meets the, you know, A&R criteria. So, sorry, I don't have more full. It's usually helpful to have Eric's input to understand some of the details of these.
Maybe we table it to the next meeting.
Well, the trouble with A&Rs is they have a short approval window. So if we don't approve them, I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's because we're meeting in 2 weeks. But if we don't approve it, it's automatically approved. Or if we don't endorse it, rather. So
Yeah, I think, you know, we can't influence it.
Yeah.
If it's easier to just never approve them because they will automatically be approved anyway, then nobody has to go sign the paperwork. I mean, I think it's
you know,
one of those things.
I don't quote me on that. I think that might be correct, but it is part of our obligation to
Right.
endorse them or review them and endorse them.
Well, the
and there
information
was-
that Eric sent says at the bottom of the remarks that the revised plan that is currently being submitted has been modified to include the bearing and distance of the new lot segment immediately east of the curve C1, and to add an additional statement to the surveyor certification. So it sounds like it's just a technical note on the plan. Makes
Very
sense?
good. Some of this fine print is so fine. I don't always get all the details. So thank you, Peter, for clarifying that. Okay.
Little
With
spot
that,
right here, it's redrawn. I think. I don't think it's anything.
great. So with that clarification, is there a motion to endorse this A&R?
So moved.
So, second.
And a second? Great.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Unanimous. I will entertain a motion.
I entertain a
I
motion
sign 'em.
that the president, that the
Second.
president of the council can sign the A&R.
I assume you mean the chair of the board, but.
Chair of the
thank you.
board. Sorry, chair of the board. I'm thinking of Mike Lodge.
Sure. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, very good. Board and staff reports. I'll just mention again that the Master Plan Implementation Committee is continuing to refine the master plan chapter updates. So we're working our way through that at every meeting. I did receive a report back to sign on the farmland of local importance, and I'm going to be getting a finalized document of that, and I will share that with the board. And from our discussion tonight, we were talking about the idea of having a discussion with Eric about seeing if there's a way for the board to get into the loop on project design sooner. So he'll obviously hear this, and we can put that on and address that in the future meeting as well.
That would be as an
And the next
optional thing,
meeting-
not a. I think the suggestion was that's more of an advisory function, not a. We're not trying to like approve things or not approve things, but just to help out, right?
Well, my sense of the discussion, and that it would be worthwhile at least discussing this with Eric, is if a developer is coming to him and has a proposed plan, and is there a way for the board to offer input? I'm not sure what Eric's answer would be, but I'm
Okay.
interested in hearing. Is there a way to get the board's input, prior to it getting more nailed down what it's going to be? So it's just
Especially if a special permit's involved, or likely involved. Like if they think,
sure.
if they know they're gonna need one and they're gonna need to come to us anyway, then we might as well start talking sooner.
Well, I'll tell you though, this was a special permit because of the driveway,
Right.
and so say it hadn't had that, so it had just been a site plan review. You still would have had the same comments, perhaps, or observations, or other people would have had on the board. Is it possible to kind of get the benefit of that wisdom and perspective earlier in the process?
Right.
I honestly don't know how feasible that is, but it seems like a reasonable question to ask Eric. So,
Yeah, and he brought us that one apartment concept by Stop and
That's
Shop
right.
that one time. I don't
That's
know
right.
what happened to that, but that was just the most preliminary drawing imaginable.
Yes. No, that's a good precedent, Jeff. Yeah, that's right. So could there be something like that with some of these other
Right.
site plans, and if
Yeah.
we could offer a bit of input, we wouldn't be making a decision. We'd just be offering, thoughts about it. And so,
Yeah.
you would think that it could be helpful. Don't want it to be too onerous a process, but
Right.
maybe it would bear some good fruit.
Well, again, I think we're supposed to be the eyes of the community.
Right.
So the eyes of the community can look at the plan well in advance of any solid designs. It can't hurt anybody. That's all behind it.
Okay. If there's nothing else,
I have one.
next meeting.
one-
Oh, please.
Quite not. We kind of talk about this right now, if the board would think if there's any value or not in this, but getting together with a focus group of some, local developers and asking them what can we do to attract development into Greenfield? What is it they're not attracted to? And maybe here, that's our job, or business development's job, or zoning's job, but somebody just getting together with the developers and saying, okay, how can we make you or entice you to come into Greenfield and do developments? What is it that you need? Because I don't know if anyone's ever asked the question, if everyone's ever heard it, and maybe it's not of any value, but it was just a suggestion I thought would be one we could put forward. I would put forward.
It's interesting, and I know that the sadly spacing on her name at the moment, but the person with the mayor's office who's in charge of economic development attends the master plan meetings, and I wonder if that person coming to a board meeting might be a nice first step in that regard.
That Amy?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd just be good to hear, if we can hear from them what they look for in a potential development site, then maybe we can keep that in our minds as well and say, okay, we hear this, we hear, and try and work with them.
We could be good stewards of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, yeah. Which is
Okay.
another question that I had. No, we don't mind. Steve had mentioned, Jeff had mentioned, form-based planning. or design, form-based design or something like that?
Someone might have mentioned that. I wouldn't be the one to.
Okay, but, you know, but I went to the first little meeting last night for the rivers and wetlands thing that Allison sponsored. She sent us an email. I went last night. And there were a couple of representatives from local towns nearby, Shelburne, Deerfield, and one other lady. And I got to asking that question off the cuff. I said, have you guys tried to do anything with your towns as far as getting a look, you know, trying to manage a look in your town? And a couple of them have done things where they passed, I guess there's zoning ordinances such as like Greenfield says we can't have a purple house. I'm not going that far, but that was one of their things. You can't put purple houses up. So we're talking about, is that something again that we could, how do we influence that? For example, I got an example, is there signs on Main Street? If all the signs on the building on Main Street were consistent or had a certain style to them, so they all looked planned and thought out, you know, that would go away to changing the look of downtown. So how do we do that? And is that our purview as well, or does that go back to zoning? You know, how does that work?
Well, just as far as sign, we not that long ago made some proposed changes to the sign ordinance in town. It wasn't about design per se, but about various aspects of signage, and how it would, you know, part of it was how it would look and the style of the town. So,
So
that
is that
something-
us, or is that zoning that, it's like, let's say
That
we
was
want, I'll use an example. We want all the buildings in downtown to be red brick and keeping with the style of the red brick building. I don't want that, but that's just a suggestion. Is that us or is that zone? That would say,
Well-
that's how we want things to do.
Right. So, I mean, I think planning board would tend to be initiating proposals like that. We did initiate about the sign ordinance, and those were approved by city council. Those
Okay.
within the past couple of
Okay.
years. But and this would be a good question for Eric too about certain, because I know he's informed about form-based code. Has previously stated he doesn't think it would apply to a community of our size that much. I don't really know much about it, but it's a good open-ended question, Victor, of, you know, what is the range, and as we're,
Well,
you know, forming
kind of goes to,
what was that?
it kind of goes to the idea of having streets as triggers for us. So at Main Street and Federal Street and High Street and River and Associate are triggers for us. And it'd be a good idea to say, okay, this is a trigger. Main Street, we want this sort of look. High Street, we want this sort of look. You know, right? They kind of flow hand in glove.
Typically, you wouldn't, I mean, one reason Eric might, what I would suggest is it's not so much the architectural style or the materials or the form in that sense, but it's at least, you know, performance-based criteria. So we want Main Street to be walkable and safe for pedestrians and active and vibrant for retail, those sorts of things. There's all sorts of ways that the zoning can support those things, for one thing, and then ways we can interpret the zoning and the master plan to make sure that new developments follow those criteria and promote walkability and have good storefronts. And that doesn't necessarily dictate what the color of the sidewalk is or the style of the window. That's kind of up to the developer or the building owner or the historic precedent or whatever it is. But in my experience, it's often just, it's maybe a more general goal that has to do with like how it performs, not so much how it looks. But there are places that are very specific about that all the signs have to be exactly this height and exactly like this. And that creates in places that are built from scratch, it creates a really cohesive environment that feels consistent.
Mhm.
You know, in a place like Greenfield, where the buildings are 150 years old, some are much newer. You know, first of all, you don't get that many opportunities to change things. So you have to I think that might be why Eric was saying the form-based code isn't so relevant. We're not getting a bunch of new buildings all the time. It's more the infill or the incremental changes.
Well, we do, don't we want them to kind of match a little better than some of the things
Well,
like,
that's what,
like GNet. I mean, GNet is kind of a sore thumb right there in the middle of that. It's aggregate washed aggregate building.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that we would really want to say, oh, that's fine, we can do that. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
yeah. I think it's theoretically within the purview of planning boards and zoning, but it's a complicated conversation.
I like complicated.
But I like your desire to get into the details, because I also want to get into the
Yeah,
details.
I mean, I think that's why we're here. I could be wrong. I think we're supposed to, so we want to hear from the community and.
I think you're right. We have an interesting opportunity to take a fresh look at all of it and kind of paint a really broad brush as to what we want to see in the community.
Thank you.
And just remind that of the two functions this board had, one is reviewing projects like we did earlier, and another is long-range planning. And so that's a pretty open-ended function, so we can consider these kind of broad topics. And
I just have a quick question, George, to run by you on the MDR discussion. We talked about incorporating changes that may come with the master plan review. Are there things that are being discussed at the master plan review level that would make sense to incorporate into the discussion of the MDR?
Gotcha. I can't say at the moment anything is jumping out at me in that regard, but I'll certainly keep that in mind in doing my review over the next month and a half. Anything else before the next meeting is August 1st, as I said. Sorry you can't be there in person, Jeff. Hope you can attend remotely, perhaps.
I'll try. We'll see. I'll be on vacation, but might be able to do it anyway.
All right. All right. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
No moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks
Thank you
for
very much.